Welcome to the Unplug Meditation Podcast. I'm so excited today to have Scott Schwenk, who I have been working with for a very long time. And I am so excited because I know many of you have meditated with him and absolutely love his voice, love his meditations, but you have no idea where he's come from or what he's doing now. So today we're going to kind of explore how he went from working in the entertainment industry to where he is now, which is just healing millions of people around the globe. And I can say millions of people because, Scott, you are on Beachbody On Demand, and we've technically taught over 1 million people on that platform.
Wow.
So FYI, I'm not exaggerating. Welcome, Scott Schwenk. Happy to have you on the Unplug Podcast.
Hi, Susie. I'm so happy to spend time with you and happy to be here. And it's just incredible what you've created, this vehicle, this container that really is so scalable infinitely now that it's so online.
Yeah, it's so limitless too, which is what's so cool about it. So this is going to be all about you, Scott. And I would love if you could share your story, where you grew up, why you went into the entertainment field, how you became a body worker, healer, breathwork teacher, meditation instructor, and now you're teaching so many people, and you're famous in our world for just having an incredible voice and being able to really just relax people on such a level that's unexplainable unless you try it yourself. So if you don't mind just kind of telling me your story, I would love to kind of learn more about you.
Sure. So I was born January 10th, 1972 at 3:47 p.m. for those of you chart enthusiasts who want to put it in Rochester, New York. And I was born to parents who, like many people in my generation, were super young. I mean, basically kids having kids. I think my mom might have been 22 or 23 when she had me. And my dad was maybe a year or two older. So kids having kids. I was not born to enlightened parents. I was born to parents who did the best they could and meant well. They were together until I was about 7. And that was my first major happening. We all have a major happening somewhere between usually between 4 and 7. That just is a major shift in experience. And the idea, oh my God, something's wrong. And so I had cooked up this thing. If I could just get my parents on the Love Boat, which was a famous TV show back then, everything would work out. So I was just convinced if I could just figure out how to get them on, just get them on the boat, everything would work out. That didn't happen. My parents separated. I lived with my dad for a few years in Rochester and back and forth with my mom on weekends. Spent a year traveling with my father. He took an early retirement from a huge then company called Kodak. And we traveled all the way up the eastern seaboard to Prince Edward's Island and back down, camping along the way, and ended up getting close to a school year. So I spent an entire year going to school in South Carolina. Talk about a culture shock where I would get sent to the principal if I didn't say yes, ma'am, every time the teacher spoke to me. I moved back up with my mom after that year. She came out of an intense period of unemployment, found a new job, and had a lot of room to grow. And she was in corporate training. So here I am coming back to Rochester to an entirely new school system than the one I left, a different suburb. First thing she does is hand me Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People to help me get my way. And one of the things I'll never forget, 2 of the things, smile often, use a person's first name as often as possible without being weird in conversation. It's music to their ears. Those 2 things have stuck with me my whole life. Around that time, because I did grow up in the YMCA, my mom took me back over and they had a program that I was now eligible for called the Leaders Corps.
What does that mean, you grew up in the YMCA?
It means I took swimming lessons all the time. It means that I went to events there all the time, overnights that parents could send their kids to have fun while they did whatever they did for date night. Summer camp, day camp. I was always going to day camp for the whole summer, and then became a counselor in training. They had a full suite of programs like the Jewish centers do and some of these other places do for really growing people with values. So I got to join the Leaders Corps which involved like a weekly meeting at the Y, my local Y, and then going to weekend events with all these other YMCAs, regional, or I remember going to a huge leaders school in Colorado in Estes Park, later in, a few years down the road. So it was always these intense exercises like values clarification. Okay, you've got one kidney you can give away at the hospital, and here's all the people, choose with your group. You and your little group figures out who lives and who doesn't, or who stays on the lifeboat. This is the stuff I was doing from 7th grade onwards. We had an elective course my senior year in high school for a whole year, which was a leadership course. So we went and did executive ropes courses and all sorts of team building exercises and figuring things out. When I went off to school, I wasn't really keen on more studying. And my mom, because she didn't get her degree early on, she got it later in life. She was really adamant. She said, Scott, you need to get that piece of paper. Find something you like and study it and just get that piece of paper. So I went in as a fine arts major. On my portfolio, I was accepted to State University of New York at Buffalo, SUNY Buffalo, and quickly pivoted to acting conservatory with a religious studies and philosophy minor, while being an RA, a resident advisor on my hall, while working at the freshman orientation in the summer times, while running for office amongst 13,000 undergraduates. I was voted into the Senate, and then I was voted as the Senate chair. I had $1.8 million of student funds to allocate and work out amongst 180 clubs and organizations. So just like on and on and on, this training. And along the way, I had a huge hunger. As a little boy, I could hear people's thoughts. I could feel people's body sensations and emotions. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't talk about it because that's what was real for me. But it drove me to find out things. I was so curious that my parents nicknamed me Curious George when I was a little boy. How? Why? Show me. Can I take it apart? I want to do that. You're not big enough. Why? When I moved to the University of Buffalo, across from one of the campuses was an East-West bookstore. And when I wasn't in class, I lived in that bookstore. I was just digesting every book I could get my hands on. Healing, hands-on healing, energy, Tibetan lineages, Hindu gurus, philosophy, everything I could possibly get my hands on. And I was sitting every Tuesday in a meditation group at another New Age bookstore, the entire 4 years. Yeah. I learned Reiki while I was in college. I learned several other modalities. I started dealing with my sexuality. I knew from a young age that I had something about me that was different, but because of the time I grew up in, well, simply put, when I hit puberty, the media blitz to every American home about AIDS went out, pamphlets and all sorts of things. So I associated being gay with dying. And so it took me a long time to actually meet people who identified as gay or bisexual, who I thought were cool. And it started to happen my senior year in college, just before I graduated. I had been meditating.
Cool in Rochester, cool in Buffalo, cool in where were you at that time?
I was in Buffalo, and I was getting ready to finish up and maybe move back to Rochester, maybe go to graduate school for more conservatory. I auditioned for American Conservatory Theater and got in San Francisco, and Circle in the Square, David Mamet's company in New York, and got in.
I'm just
but
thinking,
I had no money.
Like, if you were in New York during that time, it would have been a much different,
totally
exciting
different
experience for you.
And I was hungry to get to New York, and I eventually did. I was working at a certain point. I was working for Chase Manhattan Bank when direct banking was a thing, phone-based banking was a thing. And they were going to close down the Rochester operation, and they took all the high performers and flew us down. I stayed in a then cool hotel. It was Nean Schrager Hotel on Madison. I think it's called Madison, and was shown around the city and given the opportunity to become a personal banker. So I did. I moved to New York, and by day I was a personal banker wearing suits on the train down to my office, not in a branch. And at night I would take the train back up to the Manhattan ashram for Siddha Yoga that I was living in, and mop floors and chant and meditate and go to bed. When my Chase contract was up, I knew I wanted to go deeper with my spiritual training. So I moved to the ashram and became a full-time staff member for 2 more years. And that's where I did a lot of my intensive training about facilitating groups, facilitating ritual, mantra training, Sanskrit classes, hours and hours of sitting. And there were a lot of young people there my own age. That would have been from 97, summer of 97 to summer of 99.
Wow.
In the Catskill Mountains. And then there was a certain point where nobody told me. They invited me to stay, but I knew I was supposed to go. And when I moved into the ashram, I actually thought I was going to become a monk and live there for the rest of my life. Really thought so. And I remember thinking, all right, it's time for me to go. I don't know when, I don't know where. So I started to wonder, where should I go? Well, I want there to be a big meditative community wherever I go. And I want to live in another large city, but I've already lived in New York, so I want to do something different. And so I picked LA. I picked LA and I thought, this is a place I could bring all my sales training, all my acting background, and the Matrix movie by the Wachowskis had just come out, and I'd seen it like 5 times at the theater from the ashram. And I was just so caught up in it. I want to produce movies like that. I want to produce thought-provoking, uplifting, inspiring movies. And so I did all this networking with all these Siddha Yoga people, calling their assistants and figuring it out and having all these interviews planned for me when I arrived in LA. And I show up, I drive across country in my brand new little Beetle. It was the first new Beetle that Volkswagen made in a while.
Amazing
and
that it made it, right?
It made it, and I made it, and worked my butt off to get into the business. A lot of temping, a lot of doing thankless tasks. I was actually fired one time, the only job I've ever been fired for. I was working full-time. I only made it 5 days leading up to Oscar Sunday, working for a major fashion stylist who may or may not had a TV show on, BBC, a reality show, who may or may not have shown the rest of the world how intense she was. She says to me, if you make it through the week, I'll get you an earpiece for the cell phone we're letting you use. I'll tell you later who it was. So I was working for Innovative Artists, a number 7 agency in this business, and I got really good at what I was doing. I enjoyed it. And so I thought, well, I want to be at the best. So I called a buddy who I knew was working for a partner at CAA. He got me an interview, and within a week I was at CAA on a top talent desk training as an assistant. My boss promised me if I wanted to be an agent, I would not have to go back to the mailroom. He'd promote me right off of his desk. Then, deep into that, a couple of really powerful things happened. One thing happened to all of us, and one thing happened to us. So the thing that happened to us was we were point people on Aaliyah, the famous singer, and she died in a plane crash. Within 2 weeks, 9/11 happened. That was a huge game changer. And I remember my boss, it was now reaching towards December, walking out with what we call the weekend read. So the weekend read is like a pile of scripts that they have to read through to look for jobs for clients. And it was like 10 scripts. And I flashed forward on my life 10 years into the future. And I realized I'm a perfectionist. I'd be there probably 100 hours a week. And I wouldn't be having tea in the meditation garden. I wouldn't be rock climbing. I wouldn't be having enough time to meditate myself. I was already doing work with people on the side. I was moonlighting as an energy worker and a body worker. And I was starting to get written up in Condé Nast magazines. So I had this great client, Crystal Lord, who exposed me to her entire contact list and basically built me a business in LA. Thank you, Crystal, if you're listening. I knew, though, I didn't want to be a body worker. Somehow I've always known I was going to be a spiritual teacher, and I needed a lot of training. So I started looking for what else I needed to learn. And I bumped into the work of David Elliott. So I apprenticed very closely to him for 9 years. Private sessions every week, every retreat, every training. Took him on his book tour and managed it. While training with Sally Kempton, who I've been with for 26 years, and a few other places. So That's kind of almost gotten me current. There's a lot of other trainings I've gotten in there, like the training with Sloan School of Business at MIT, learning how to do culture work with businesses and cause transformation and change without using Sanskrit terms.
I love hearing about all the trainings. Feel free to continue sharing some of them, because for those of you who are listening, David Elliott has really been such a feeder to Unplug, where basically he's a teacher's teacher, where I have a lot of his students end up teaching an Unplug, the ones that have gone through 1 through 5. Sally Kempton, you also brought to me, and she did the Tantric meditation, and she was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And you've really brought so many high quality people to Unplug, beyond you. I mean, like, you're amazing. But the fact that you've been sharing people with me as well is really just remarkable. So I would love to hear people that you've learned from, that you've been inspired by.
I did a 10-year home study course, two lessons a month of about 12 pages each for 10 years with a fellow named D.R. Butler, who's now deceased. I met him through Siddha Yoga, through the ashram. That's where I met Sally. She was Swami Durgananda. She was one of the prime teaching monks. And she's an incredible teacher. I mean, just incredible. So Vanita Ramirez is an incredible therapist that I've been working with probably 6 years now, at least. Mm-hmm. And she's trained in a model of how egos can grow through a lifetime, and what are the things that help an ego to grow. So in meditation, people can have experiences of the witness. People can have experiences of the deep heart, peak experiences. People can move from being somebody who's like fidgeting and having a hard time sitting still to somebody who can actually sit still for an entire half an hour, eventually a whole hour. But then it keeps going deeper and deeper. Mm-hmm. And there are ways to know what stage somebody is in meditation by what object they're aware of while they're meditating. And as it deepens, really deepens, people become able to notice awareness itself and let that be the object of meditation. To a beginner, that sounds like, what are you talking about? So a beginner is watching their breath because I can feel my breath, or I'm watching softening my body because I can feel my body. But there are stages of meditation development. The Buddhists have been really good about mapping this in very granular terms. Mm-hmm. Another thing that's different is these stages of growing up. How many perspectives can you and I take on a real moment? Like, things have happened at the studio. There was that break-in that happened years ago. You take 10 different people, they're going to have 10 different perspectives on that very same moment, mm-hmm. based on their growing up stage. It's how many perspectives can I actually see and action on in a moment? And that's more the work kind of psychology. Mm-hmm. So the work with Vanita has trained me in that. And you can tell where somebody's at and how to move them along. So let's say we'd have 20 people at Unplug, all meditating on emptiness. The beauty of the emptiness behind the ordinary mind that's shining where anything is possible. We're all meditating on this. Mm-hmm. Each person is going to interpret that experience through their growing up stage. So somebody who's a fundamentalist may think that is the God of their religion that showed up in their meditation. Mm-hmm. Somebody who's a really late stage of evolution will recognize that this love that I'm feeling isn't my love. It's everywhere, and I was receptive to it. Vast difference between those two perspectives. So learning how to help people move through their meditation stage and move through the stages of growing up, I've found has helped people to grow so fast and furiously and deeply that we've got people who not only have big experiences in meditation, but are really effective in high energy moments in life, in government, in business, in coronavirus response, in any number of things. So that the meditation insights actually become accessible wisdom that I act from consistently, even when I'm not being paid for it.
Scott, what are some of the key things, like for you, that you've actually gotten from this practice? Like if you were to say my biggest moments of meditation are flop, what would they be?
My first biggest moment of meditation would be during my very first meditation intensive in the Siddha Yoga ashram. And that's where I received two things that completely changed my life and still do. One was receiving what I call an empowered mantra to repeat and practice. I had heard about mantras, but they were more like thoughts I was thinking. Whereas from the moment I received this, it was this psychoactive ball of presence that drew me deeper than I'd ever gone in meditation. That's number one. Number two is what we call the witness. I had never noticed that there was an awareness watching the thinker in my head. I always thought I was the thinker. And when I started to get that I could actually look from the perspective of the witness, I became a less reactive person. I started to be able to train in coming from the witness and then having more choice about my reactions. Often it started like right after the reaction and then like retrospect, but it got sooner and sooner and sooner to the real time, to where now I can actually walk around and do walk around mostly in a witnessing perspective.
Wow.
Now, how that impacts me in current times, my mom passed away from cancer 1.5 years ago after a very long battle. And anybody who's lost a parent, I don't care what your relationship was like, it hurts when they go. Mm-hmm. It just does. My practices of meditation and learning to meditate on love itself helped me to get through this, still are helping me to get through this, because when those waves of intense grief come up, I notice that the pull is to look over my shoulder at the past at what seems to be gone and feel bad about it, rather than what I now do, which is to think about how intensely I love her and she loves me, and just focus on the love now, without a story, without like looking over my shoulder at the past. Just focus on the love and actively love. And meditation has given me the capacity to do that.
I love what you just said, by the way, about the idea of being able to not regret. And then it puts you in a place where you can actually live without regret.
Yeah.
Or at least less regret than you would have lived in prior to your being able to witness your own reactions.
I can go a little few words further and say why I think that is. Here's why. I've come to continuously realize the more I sit for meditation that anything that reacts in me, mm-hmm. It's valid. It has a perspective that I need to listen to, but it's not the whole of my identity. It's not all that I am. Whatever is reacting in me is a piece of energy that's still in my nervous system from some prior moment that I haven't metabolized. So if I can see that happening, I'm not going to react and create more problems. I'm going to actually have compassion for that part of my body or energy system. And I also have the ability to sit down in that moment or just even in motion and feel wherever it is in my body and breathe and let it become free energy again. Because I know from practical experience that everything that exists is made of one creative energy resource. And when I remember that, anger is not a problem. Sadness is not a problem. Grief is not a problem. They're just this one energy resource that has formed into grief or anger. And I can meet it with compassion and spaciousness, and it resolves itself without me having to do anything if I'll just sit with it.
If you were to say now, what you would want your impact to be on the world, because I'm sure you've thought about it. I mean, we all think about, especially because we're in meditation all the time, how we want to be, how we want to impact the world. What would your to-be list be?
To be a legacy of love, to be a legacy of joy, to be a legacy and to be mirroring that really is possible to feel love, joy, stillness, contentment without requiring anyone or anything outside of me to be different. That these all arise within. I want people to find that out for themselves, to feel that for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
and to believe in what I'm calling the power of grace. This something that can become a hummingbird, a galaxy, a Susie and a Scott without diminishing any of its ability to do more.
Mm-hmm.
And that this grace can make the impossible possible. That I don't have to rely on my own history to produce results or to grow. That there's something that's intelligent that is everywhere. And that if I'll just create the right causes and conditions with my breath and my softening of my body, I can become more and more aware of it, partner with it, and be led by it, and have a much happier life than my ego could have ever created.
You are creating programming now. And I would love to hear a little bit about that, because I know you've done so many amazing things on Unplug and on the Unplug app. You've done amazing workshops at Unplug, and I see that you're doing stuff for One Commune, which I love. It's called One Commune with Jeff.
One commune or commune, yeah. And some people like to say commune. There's an argument about, is it commune or commune?
Oh, good question. Well, I love those guys, by the way. You introduced me to Jeff and Skylar, and I love them both. They were from Wanderlust, and you were teaching over there breath work, and then you are doing stuff on their platform, and now you're doing stuff on your own platform, I believe.
Yes.
Let's talk about, like, what are you doing now? Why would somebody come to see you, and like, how can you help them, and what are you working on right now?
I'm really excited to share that we're working on what's called the Power of Presence training. And I piloted this as an in-person training last, I guess it would be a year and a half ago at Wanderlust, when it still had a brick and mortar building. And we went out with my team. I've hired a team, and we went out to Joshua Tree. I rented an Airbnb, and for 7 days, 13 to 15 hour shooting days, we shot a whole ton of content, 5 pillars. Each pillar is 5 hours of content. So there's Dharma talks, there are associated breath practices and meditations, PDFs and journal prompts.
Mm-hmm.
The pillars are practice, integrity, preparation, inner state, and empathy. And each one of those is broken down into very actionable parts. It's a training for people who want to facilitate anything, or who lead groups in businesses, to take that next leap in being able to, for example, what's the difference between giving an instruction and transmitting the presence of the result of the instruction? Like, what's the difference between talking about entering the witness and being able to actually speak about it in a way that the listener feels a presence being guided in that meditation? How to deliver a potent teaching that actually unfolds within a person's psyche. How to communicate in a way that actually lands. How to work with challenging moments in groups, stuff like that. What are all the levers and dials to be able to actually transmit something like an empowered mantra? What do the sages say about that? What's the real moments of it? Can anybody give a mantra and have it have real power? So we get into all of this and so much more. And I'm really pleased to say that we've received generous financial support from Om Mushrooms. That's a first for me. These functional mushroom guys, who I've been taking functional mushrooms for 22 years or more. And I'm really excited to work with a brand that is interested in helping people grow, and that can work with the physiology too, that I can say, hey, maybe try this out. Try this lion's mane out before you meditate, or try this cordyceps out to get more oxygen in your blood before you work out, or whatever.
They're saying that mushrooms are the new turmeric. And I'm hearing a lot about mushrooms these days.
I wouldn't quit turmeric anytime soon, because it's awesome. Om Mushrooms. Yeah, there's a few different brands out there, like Hybrid Herbs I like a lot. Paul Stamets has, what's his, Four Sigmatic, I think is his company. There's so much data about mushrooms. And what's fascinating about, it's a fancy term, the mycelium network around the entire earth, is it's like a giant cell phone network. Every living thing is connected to every living.
We're talking about hallucinogenics, right?
Oh, no, we're talking about
Mushrooms are
functional mushrooms. We're talking about medicinal mushrooms that are legal to buy over the counter anywhere in the United States.
But are we hallucinating when we take them?
Nope.
Or so
Nope. Not unless you're already hallucinating.
what? So what do they do?
So lion's mane, for example, increases what's called cognitive neurogenesis. When I was a kid, when you and I were kids, we were told that you can't regrow brain tissue. Turns out that's not true. We've learned, and you and I have talked about the study from Harvard. I think it was when Unplug first opened, and they studied.
That was our study.
Exactly right. That within 8 weeks of mindfulness meditation, I think it was like 26 minutes a day, significant regrowth in the frontal cortex, prefrontal cortex. Lion's mane is a mushroom that can actually regenerate nerves and brain tissue.
Wow.
And it's definitely been studied clinically for focus, for heightening focus and working with other things too. I'm trying to be very careful about what I say so as to not make any claims or promises. Cordyceps has been used by Tibetan herdsmen for centuries at high altitudes to get more oxygen. It opens the lungs. It's a vasodilator in some degree, I believe. Then there's other mushrooms like
this for 20 years.
Yeah, Ron Teagarden. I've been using Dragon Herbs products since I was 22. I'm 49 now, so I'd say longer than 22 years.
And you look great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Maybe that's why.
I also have a really good light in here. And I meditate. I really believe 1,000%. You know, if we had taken before and after photographs of everybody who came into Unplug, who bought like a month package and came every day, we would see that meditation could do for you what no plastic surgery could ever do.
You're right. It's really true. Like, it's unbelievable. How long do you meditate for?
You know, I used to meditate an hour a day, no matter what. And then I went through, was it a year where I was doing 3 and 4 hour sits at one time every day?
Wow.
Currently, I would say, one, I walk around in a state of meditation, and I don't say that lightly.
Right.
So what I used to have to sit for an hour to get to is now my normal, is my baseline, but that's not enough for me. So at night lately, I'm sitting for maybe an hour and a half or two, a little bit more cozy than I would teach formal meditation. I'm sitting in my bed with a bunch of pillows behind me, and I'm just dropping in and just being quiet and letting my meditation spontaneously. I'm not like, oh, I'm going to do a mantra meditation, or I'm doing chakra meditation. I'm just being present and letting this inner energy guide my focus, which it does. And I use that time to digest my day, and I'm scanning my body for anything I'm holding without having to get into the story, and just and breathe into it and let go on the exhales, which is my main form of breath work.
Just you doing that, honestly, I swear it just went through me.
Yeah,
I know that's
but that's transmission. When I talk about transmission, it's a real thing. Like, it doesn't. People say, "Oh, well, should I do a session with you, or should I wait until after quarantine is completely over? You know, am I going to lose anything on Zoom?" And it's like, no. And here's why.
That just made me feel so good. Wow.
Everything is connected to everything. I want to say this one thing for everybody that changed my life. You asked me about things that changed my life. When I heard this simple line from a Tantric writing, what is here is there. What is not here is nowhere. What is here is there. What is not here is nowhere. What it means is Vishvasara Tantra. We'll say it's a different version of what Hermetic alchemy says, as above, so below. Like, we've seen cute bumper stickers and t-shirts, but do we really know what it means? As above, so below. What it means is anything that really exists permanently is either everywhere or nowhere. So love does not leave the room when somebody breaks up with me. Love does not leave my life when my mom dies, when her physical body dies. Love does not leave when I can't get a hold of my father on the phone. Love is either everywhere or nowhere. And what my meditation practice makes me available to is recognizing that these things that all of us most want to experience in life are right here in the present moment, in the room we're in. The room you as the listener are sitting in right now is the holiest place there will ever be. Why? Because you're there. Nobody pours love on my head. And when I'm in a relationship, nobody pours like a substance we can see. It's something that I open to that's already everywhere. And don't take my word for it. Try it out in your meditation experience. Show yourself.
You also talked about something, and I felt like it was like a lotus flower. And I'm not a hippie, by the way. Anybody who is listening to this knows that I like to keep it secular and simple and corporate ready. But you said that you teach people in this program that you're doing how to land and how to open it up inside of you.
Yeah.
How to teach in a way that lands with someone and opens up inside of them. That's what you said.
Yeah. And there's some prerequisites to make that happen. Number one, and this is the biggest thing, tons of hours of direct experience of the thing I say I want to teach. If I'm not intimate with the thing I want to have land in you, it's just going to be words you hear me say that you have to figure out. Whereas I have spent so much time working with my breath day in and day out for years and years and years, decades, that for me to just my attention is on the release that's happening. And then through the mirror neurons in your body, you can feel it. But the main thing is for me to have lots of hours of practice. It's one thing to go through a teacher training of anything and learn the practical skills and be able to repeat them, on command or on a test. It's a whole other thing to have enough hours on the cushion to actually know what's happening with the student while they're sitting with their eyes closed and be able to help them navigate, let alone to answer their deep questions about what's happening in their experience and actually say something useful and relevant. Mm. So to make a teaching land or a communication land, I have to be intimate with it as I'm sharing it. So if I'm going to talk about love and that anything can be, alchemized in love, I actually have to be touching love while I'm talking about it. And if I'm really touching love while I'm talking about it, anybody who's receptive is going to feel it. And it's not mystical or woo-woo. It's just physics. We have these neurons through our whole body, head to toe, that can feel the environment. It's scientific. There's nothing mystical about it. It only seems mystical when you don't know. It's just how reality works. If you were there in the studio and I had super quiet shoes and I could run up behind you, you couldn't see me, but you'd feel something. You would feel something. That's mirror neurons.
Yeah.
So why would it be different with love or the stillness of meditation?
I love that. And it's so true. And you can feel it when teachers are just dialing it in versus when they meditate before they teach. We always say, we do a teacher training here at Unplug, and we're like, if you have to meditate before you teach meditation. When you teach meditation, that is not your meditation. Your meditation is your meditation. Yeah. And then you, when you are teaching, are holding space for so many people. So I feel like I could be talking to you for 5 hours, and I want to beg you to do more sleep meditations on the Unplug app because your voice is so relaxing and your meditations are like the 7 point of softening.
6
points of softening. Yeah. The 7th is in my head. 7th is the way that it makes me feel.
I like that. I'm going to work with that. I'm going to work with that.
It's true. But yeah, there's just so much to you that we could talk and beam ourselves out forever. But I'd love to know, if you could share anything with, the people who are listening to this, who are going to be on the Unplug Meditation app. They're going to be able to go to a place where they can learn more about you, not like a URL or anything like that. That's not what I'm asking. What about you would you like for the people who are meditating with you on the Unplug app to know?
I would like you to know that I'm as ordinary as dirt. And if I can do this, you can do this. There's nothing particularly, I think, special about me. I have 5 fingers and toes or 10 fingers and toes and, eyes that blink and all that. What I have is I have a will to grow that I touch each and every day. I have a will to grow, and I have a will to become love, to merge with love, to come from love. And I consciously touch those every day throughout the day. I keep reminding myself, love is not given or taken. It's not exchanged. It arises within. The more love I want to feel, the more love I need to train in inside. What sets me apart, if anything does, is my commitment to practice. Relentlessly practicing in so many circumstances and turning every moment of my life just about into a practice. How can I use this to practice?
Love it. Scott, you're on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. What's the best way for people to kind of connect with you?
I'm the most active on Instagram. I have a personal page and a fan page on Facebook. I'm not really active there just yet. So Instagram is where a lot of my regular content is. I think 2 posts a day is what I'm doing now, just newly. And I've got plenty of content on Unplug Meditation on the app. There's tons of stuff there. My website can be looked at. It's just my name, scottschwenk.com, and you could look through there. The main thing is like, trust your instincts. Just because 20,000 people love one of my meditations doesn't mean it's the best one for you today. Maybe it's a different one. Maybe it's, Tracy Stanley's Yoga Nidra practice. Mm-hmm. I'm just enamored with her new book, which arrived. I keep staring at the cover. It's so beautiful.
Have you done her meditations on Unplug?
I haven't. And I have access to her course on commune, and I need to do it there too. That's another place to find me pretty easily. It's an inexpensive engagement if somebody doesn't want to own anything there.
They have courses on commune that are so cool.
Yeah.
And I love those guys. Scott, thank you so much for spending so much time with me. I really appreciate it. I love hearing your story and just how you got from where you were to where you are now, and where are we going? Where do you see Scott Schwenk in the next 5 years?
I see a lot more international travel. I was supposed to be doing this year a 10-day retreat in Bhutan with the Six Senses Resorts, and then coronavirus hit when we were starting to plan that. Mm-hmm. So I see doing more travel and more group stuff. I have a feeling I'm going to scale back my private work, my one-on-one work, to really vetting people who are up to something. Otherwise, focusing on creating more of this content that can be taken anytime, anywhere, and then traveling. I cannot wait to get back in a room and lead retreats again. I miss it so much.
I know we're going to open up Unplug soon. So if you want to do a little group there, feel free. I mean, right now it's just like open, wanting to be felt.
Wow. Yeah, I will definitely keep that in mind. I would love to, do something within the schedule that fits, that's like a more intensive study. Maybe it's like deepening something for people who've already been trained preliminarily as teachers, like taking it to the next level and upping their game, or I don't know. I just like working with people who are committed to deeper study. I love that.
Yeah, I always say Unplug's like the gateway drug to the deeper practices. So if you wanna take them deeper, we can gateway them to you.
Right on.
Thank you again, and I really appreciate your time. Again, you guys listen to Scott's different meditations on the Unplug app and check him out on Instagram.